You know what we're watching today? Well, folks, some 6 years ago, I stood on this very location reviewing the first Avengers movie, and that was a testing ground for a lot of superhero movies, then just to prove that team-up superhero movies could be done, and done effectively. Marvel have perfected their craft. You know, they built each character that was in this movie from the ground up, with the exceptions of Hawkeye and Black Widow, because they never got their standalone movies, but they got enough screen presence in Thor and Iron Man 2, respectively, to get to know these characters. And Hawkeye got, a huge build and presence with the first Avengers movie, and had his character expanded upon in Avengers Age of Ultron, which that movie came 3 years ago, and it kind of built upon what had been established, and also exploring possibilities of stories for future movies, as we saw with Captain America Civil War. And now, all roads that have started from the first Avengers movie with the reveal of Thanos at the end credits have led to this. This is the big one. This is the one we've all been waiting for the last 6 years. Can this deliver? Because this is the trifecta of team-up movies with regards to Marvel, and this one has to deliver. So, in 2.5 hours, you will know my exact opinion about Infinity War. Until then, we're out. Well, you've come to the spoiler review. So, as per norm, I'm going to give you 5 seconds just to click off this and then go to the spoiler-free link in the description below, and I'll just wait. Alrighty then. Now we got that out of the way, time for the review. The writing is solid. They don't overdo it with each character. They actually give enough characters their own little materials to work with. So with Gamora getting Peter Quill, Star-Lord, to promise her, for him to promise her that he'll kill her to stop Thanos getting what he's looking for. Thor going off to this distant star to get himself a replacement to Mjolnir. This time it's his axe. I can see the Gimli jokes already. There's my watch. And it's just seeing this kind of this triangle situation between Peter Parker, Tony Stark, and Stephen Strange, where Parker is along for the ride because he inadvertently got caught up trying to get Stephen Strange out of it, and Tony is saying, look, you shouldn't be on here. And Peter's reasoning is, well, I can't call myself a friendly neighborhood Spider-Man if there's no neighborhood to defend, which I thought, okay, I'm going to give you props for that one, because there's a lot of merit and validity to what he's saying. And Stark and Strange, they're butting heads, saying, look, I have to protect the Time Stone, and Stark saying, no, we should just go right full on attack, and he's just saying, look, I'm here to try and save the universe, and he's like, well, I'm just trying to save Earth. And similar thing with this kind of dynamic that's going on between Scarlet Witch and Vision. Vision has been trying to stay off the grid, and even he's a target, because obviously Thanos is after everyone. Loki is taken out in the opening act. It's like, that's Tom Hiddleston done. He's not coming back this time. Hulk is sent back to Earth via the Bifrost, and Banner's back on Earth now, but we only see Hulk in the beginning. And throughout the movie, Hulk is actually refusing to emerge, which is a little strange, no pun intended, because Hulk is one of these characters that, particularly from what we've known from comic books, the TV series, and the animated series from back in the day, there's not really a lot required to get Bruce to show his greener side. In fact, if you look at the 1996 animated series, which I still recommend is like the best incarnation of an animated Hulk to this day, you know, Hulk is a little bit of a, you know, Banner, it doesn't really take a lot to get to him, just to be able to let the Jolly Green Giant out, which I find it's a little bit ironic, because the Hulk is not jolly from most incarnations I've seen of him, although Avengers, Earth's Mightiest Heroes, he does have a slightly more humor side and a lot more dialogue. There's loads of other, you know, interesting dynamics that are going on, particularly between Thanos and Gamora, because we're shown that there is a kind of a stepfather, stepdaughter kind of connection established from a very young age. And, you know, I have to give props to Zoe Saldana. She plays this so well. She's got a lot of range to work with, and the girl shows emotion even when, you know, when it's under the belief that Quill will actually kill Gamora after she's asked him to, and it's Thanos being a troll, just controlling reality, and instead of you know, a high-powered weapon, you know, hand weapon, it's bubbles that are coming out of it, and it's like, okay, weren't expecting that. Like most Avengers movies, there is a lot of quips and a lot of good humor, and a lot of it, I think the best gags are used particularly between Parker and Stark, particularly when Parker is just dropping quite a few pop culture references, one of which to Aliens, because have you seen this really old movie? And he's given this look to say, oh, not this again. Thor with the Guardians. I mean, there's a lot of good quips between him and Rocket, and it's interesting to see Rocket being kind of like that voice of reason with Thor, whereas Rocket would be, you know, kind of that snarky little douchebag that would try and get something started between him and Star-Lord. It's just interesting to see kind of the dynamic of his character turned on its head, and he's the one saying, hey, should we really be doing this? Or I was like, are you sure about this? So it's interesting to see that kind of dynamic evolved and improved with Rocket, so I was glad to see that. There's not really a lot used with Drax the Destroyer. I mean, Batista plays his part well, but he's almost like a background character, even almost trying to act invisible, because he claims he's invisible by standing still for an hour and only moving so, you know, so slowly, and I'm like, no. Seeing the return of the Red Skull, it's like, whoa, it's like, yeah, you were in the movie with the Thing, some 7 years ago. I mean, we know it's not Hugo Weaving, I know it's a different actor, but particularly with the prosthetic makeup that they put on, you wouldn't be able to tell anyway, particularly in a similar context to whenever Robert Llewellyn plays Kryten on Red Dwarf, because he's got the prosthetic head on as Kryten the android, you couldn't tell who was underneath there anyway. And, you know, the actor that they got, he's a very decent sound-alike to Hugo, but he didn't want to reprise his role. He just didn't have any interest, so, you know, that's understandable. As I mentioned, it was good to see the inclusion of the Guardians, but it would have been, I think it would have been more beneficial if they had been included on Earth, just to be able to see this whole battle come together. And let's talk about the death toll. Let's talk about the death toll count in this movie. Oh, sweet Lord. this, in terms of, you know, it's not uncommon in a movie series or even TV series when you see characters get written off, killed off, whichever your preference. But this was a massacre. You see people, when I got told, because I actually read spoilers before going to watch this, my main concern was the two characters I was really concerned about, actually make that three, the three characters I was really concerned about whether they were going to stay on into the next movie. Number one, we know that Iron Man will live to fight another day. Captain America is going to stick around, but Spidey, oh, that, you know, Gamora's death was impactful and really emotional, but I think Parker's hit home so much more because of the fact that, you know, this version of Spider-Man is the youngest that has ever been seen on the silver screen, and Robert and Tom really play it up well as like a surrogate father and son situation, and you gotta feel like Tony feels really, really responsible for this because he was the one who brought Spider-Man into the situation. And it's always that expression, death is least funniest when it happens to a child. And given, like I say, how young Parker is in this version, it's like, oh, it's like, ooh, don't know how to react to that. But the very, very somber tone to this flick at the end, it's like, oh, this is not a regular Avengers movie, because usually the setup that an Avengers movie would have from start to finish, problem, MacGuffin, team up, have a few problems, get problems resolved, crack a few quips, get to the end, save the day, everyone goes happy. This time, ooh, whoa. And, you know, a lot of the somber ending is to do with the way that they had written Thanos, because he is probably one of the better villains that they've written for the big screen in the last 10 years, which in the opening reveal, before they actually went to start into the movie, Marvel Studios, but then they managed to have the I and O in Studios look like the number 10, because this year is the 10th year Marvel Studios have been in business, and at the time of recording this spoiler review, tomorrow will be 10 years since Iron Man debuted at the box office, particularly in the UK, because I do believe it was May 1, 2008, when Robert Downey Jr. was introduced to the world as the first ever man to play a live-action version of Tony Stark. And that movie is still awesome to this day. I can watch that movie quite happily and still feel like I'm being introduced to it for the first time, because there's something quite redeemable and quite rewatchable about the first Iron Man, because you're not essentially an audience member just, you know, watching Tony become Iron Man for the first time. You feel like you're on the journey with him, and it's been an incredible journey for Tony Stark as a character, because he was the one who started it all. And now he's at that point where he's one of the last few surviving. It's like, where do we go from here? Because Thanos was, could be the one to end it all. Because Thanos, here's the thing, Thanos is at a level of crazy in this movie that he honestly believes that what he is doing is the right thing. He believes what he's doing in his mind and in his gut is the best for everybody, to have genocide throughout the universe, when anybody else would turn around and say, you think you're establishing peace by wiping out half of the life in the universe. Like, dude, you're crazy. Because a crazy person will believe what they are doing is right, no matter how screwed up their logic is. And he's possibly the most evil Marvel villain that we've seen to date. Because, to a subtle degree, you could argue with Ultron there was some logic to what he was doing, even though he had flown one too many times over the cuckoo's nest. Loki, he's like, I'm bad, so what? You know, it's what I work with. But Thanos, he honestly believes what he's doing is right. You know, he believes that the end justifies the means. And you sort of think, whoa, hold on there. It's like, wow. I mean, particularly where he sacrifices Gamora, a character that was like a daughter to him, just to be able to get the Soul Stone, because the deal is, you want that Infinity Stone, you have to sacrifice someone. And I'm watching this thinking, I actually like Gamora. Why have you got to kill her? You know? She's actually nice. Then, no, it's also a little bit of bias because I happen to like Zoe Saldana because she's both a very competent actress and she's very nice on the eyes. You're all thinking it. But yeah, writing, this is probably the deepest Avengers movie as to where they're going to go for Avengers 4. To either bring back half the people or to undo the damage. I don't know. We know that the next movie is going to be the Captain Marvel, which is going to be a prequel to this movie, because that one is going to be set in the 90s and we're going to see a younger Nick Fury. So either Sam Jackson is going to have some visual post-production done where he's made to look younger, or they just simply dye his hair and his beard up. I don't know. But it'll be interesting to see where we go from here, because where do you go after half the life in the universe has been decimated just because one individual thinks he's doing the right thing by destroying half the life? I don't know. But, like I say, writing, can't really fault it. It's just, like I say, you will walk away from this thinking like, oh, this isn't your happy-go-lucky, jokey Avengers ending or an uplifting feel. This has a very dark and deep, I don't want to say sentiment, but it's definitely going to be like, ooh, they went there, ooh. As for the cast and their acting, everyone knows my feelings about Scarlett Johansson. I know that she's done a couple of movies whereby she does actually show that she can actually act, but they don't really use her to her fullest extent in this. I think she only has maybe 20 minutes worth of screen time, if that. If you look at all her cameras, all the scenes and put it all together, maybe 20 to 30 minutes. But everyone turned in, aside from Scarlett, everyone turned in a very, very good performance. And it's Robert Downey Jr. and Josh Brolin that steal the show in this. I mean, that's not to say Benedict Cumberbatch didn't do his part as Doctor Strange, and you know, I don't know why some people narc on his performance. I think it's fine, but Josh Brolin, you know, he really pours a lot of energy and a lot of emotion into this, especially as I just mentioned in the writing. You know, this character honestly believes he's doing this for the betterment, to, you know, show people mercy and what have you, when the guy is about 2 sandwiches short of a picnic. And as ever, Robert Downey Jr. clocks in another great performance as Tony Stark, and I think what has been so endearing and enduring with him as the character is that the character always feels fresh. Robert is always able to bring something to the table that keeps the character interesting and is able to get the audience to be invested. I mean, when he started out as Iron Man, he was like... It's almost like a big kid that got to be a superhero in life, where he's able to live out his fantasies, being able to fly, being able to have... I suppose you could call it superpowers, but you don't, having tech doesn't really give you powers. You have abilities and facilities available to you, but they're not really powers. Although, I like the fact that this time, with the Iron Man suit, they kind of borrow a little bit more from Extremis, because he's had the arc reactor put back in this time, but this time it's nanotech. So the suit goes all over his body in a similar way to how the symbiote would have gone all over Peter to form the Black Spider-Man suit, which is one of the things I was a little bit critical about with the third movie, is that he's able to take the suit off. I'm like, no, that's not how the symbiote suit works. And Sony, little heads up, it's symbiote, not symbiote. I know a lot of people have been chewing them out for that. Although I think the guy who played Dr. Connors in Spider-Man 3 actually pronounced it as a symbiote, but comment section below to see if he actually did or not, because we need to have some sort of clarification whether he did or didn't. But anyway. So, Stark, he just, like I say, he just clocks another performance, and Josh Brolin just gives so much energy to the role. And again, it's another honest performance. I just, not to say that Josh Brolin is like Thanos in real life. I mean, I personally hope not. But, you listen to the dialogue and you look at the physical mannerisms, you can actually see emotion in his face. Even in the visual post-production to make Josh look like Thanos, you can see emotion in his eyes. And that is where you're able to make a character come to life, when you're actually able to put that kind of performance out. So, Josh, I'll be very surprised if he doesn't get an award for this. Maybe not from the Academy Awards, but certainly something like the MTV Movie Awards. And as I mentioned, it was great to see two worlds within the Marvel Cinematic Universe come together, with the Guardians coming into the Avengers setup along with Doctor Strange. And it's just seeing how Thor interacts with the Guardians of the Galaxy, and I'm hoping that they're able to bring them back somehow, because I enjoyed Guardians Volume 2. I thought that was a very decent sequel. It actually explored a lot of Star-Lord's background and past, and particularly with his celestial father in Ego. So I'm hoping there's going to be a way to bring them back, because I feel like Guardians of the Galaxy is a franchise that needs to be expanded upon more, because there's so many possibilities that you can work with them. And like I say, with casting, other than the odd, one or two people that just kind of phoned it in, acting, I can't fault anybody. So, yeah. Well, with the score, we're dealing with Alan Silvestri once more, and considering this man is responsible for the iconic Back to the Future score, along with, I think, yes, he also did the Captain America score, if I'm not mistaken. So this man is always going to produce gold. There are three composers in the movie industry that they're always going to put out quality. Even if the movie's terrible, these three specifically will put out a good score. Alan Silvestri, as I just mentioned. Hans Zimmer, I know some people are a little bit on the fence with him, but, you know, he is one of the best, that's my opinion. And the third, and probably the most iconic, is, and I always refer to him as Sir John Williams, even though he is an American citizen, but, you know, you listen to things like the Indiana Jones franchise with his score, Jurassic Park, Superman. I mean, this man always puts out gold, and same thing with the Star Wars franchise. You know, he is one of the go-tos. He is the guy to learn from how to be a good composer. I mean, you listen to the Superman March from 1978. That's iconic. Same thing with the Jurassic Park theme, which I'm eager for Jurassic World 2 in June, which will see Chris Pratt also reprising one of his other famous roles that he's really settling into as Owen Brady. So that'll be interesting to see. And Silvestri really plays to his strengths because he's able to keep it action-packed and suspenseful, but he knows how to play it up when there's these very eerie and very, you know, dark and very sad moments, especially at the end. And he is always worth the paycheck. So Silvestri, you deserve an Oscar and various other awards as well, because, hey, you're one of the best, bar none. Well, one of the things that Marvel have been pretty good with in the last 10 years, they know how to do the visual effects. You know, there are times now, excuse me, there are times when watching a flick where you're able to distinguish between CG and something that's either animatronic or something that's placed in that they just enhance with CG. With this one, I think particularly with regards to Iron Man and Hulk respectively, I mean, ever since Hulk has been in the first Avengers movie, they're able to produce a realistic looking Hulk whereby, you know, you'd have to have a really trained eye to know what is CG and what isn't. And the same thing with the Iron Man suit. You look at the first Iron Man movie, particularly when Stark is getting suited up for the first time in the Mark III suit, which is my personal favourite, even along with this from Iron Man 2, which I've actually had this shirt 8 years next month. So, yeah, this one's still in good condition. Particularly with the way that the Iron Man suit just, you know, flows every inch of Tony Stark to cover him up in a similar way to the symbiote. You know, ever since Weta Digital took over, especially from Iron Man 3, they have been pretty much been a staple. But then again, considering this is the same visual effects company that were used in Avatar and Rise of the Planet of the Apes, which I think was a 2011 movie, comment section below. You know, they are always going to earn their money's... You're always going to get your money's worth and then some with that. And especially the work that they did on Thanos. I mean, that is superb work where... You know you're doing well if you're able to fool the eye. There are some things that you can tell is CG when it's done really poorly. One of the things I noticed with the Justice League movie, because random bought that recently, I have a trained enough eye now to be able to distinguish from a practical film set and something that's green screen. And there are a lot of shots in Justice League where you can tell so well what is, you know, what is a green screen and what isn't. But with Infinity War, there are only like a handful of shots where you can tell the difference, but most of the time you think that look real. So visual effects, 15 out of 10, as always. What? I'm quirky and eccentric and over the top. What were you expecting? It does beg to question, where do they go from here? You know, half the cast are gone now through wilting away. Particularly with how it is, we know, with Gamora was sacrificed by Thanos just to get the Soul Stone. It's hitting Captain America real hard with Bucky gone. Because, they were childhood friends. And, it's really hurting Tony Stark. Particularly bad. Because it hits home where Parker is like a surrogate son to him. And vicariously, Parker looks up to Stark because he kind of sees Iron Man as his hero. And he's always wanted to be an Avenger. And there's a sense of, you got to be thinking that Stark feels responsible and guilty for a lot of this because he was the one who brought Spider-Man into this setup. He made him an Avenger. And to hear this sense of fear coming from Tom Holland's vocal delivery when he's slowly wilting away, and you get the sense that Stark is trying to comfort both himself and Parker whilst Spider-Man is wilting away. Because, like I say, Spidey is so young in this version. I mean, he's younger compared to the portrayals by Tobey Maguire and Andrew Garfield, respectively, because Maguire's version was just finishing up with high school and going on to university, whereas throughout the first Amazing Spider-Man, we actually see Spider-Man still staying at high school, but then in the sequel, he's off to university. So that version had to be like 17 to 19, whereas Parker in this version is 15. And as I mentioned earlier, death is least funniest when it happens to a child, and you feel bad for Tony because, again, he was the one who brought Parker into this situation, so there's a huge weight of guilt and responsibility that are now, in his mind at least, resting on his shoulders. It's like, I brought the kid in. How am I supposed to feel? And again, where does this go? Into the next movie, because we see in the end credits, just as everybody's disintegrating, Nick Fury sends out a distress call to Captain Marvel. Now, what that character is going to be able to do in Avengers 4, I don't know. Because we've yet to see the Captain Marvel movie, so it'll be interesting to see what Carla Danvers can actually do to restore balance. Because I'd like to believe that in Avengers 4, we'll actually see most of the cast restored. But we know that, from what I understand, the deal is up for Spider-Man with Infinity War. Because apparently, this and an untitled Spider-Man Homecoming sequel, that will be it for Spidey in this version, and he's back off to Sony. Which personally I'm a little bit worried about, because given Sony's track record for attempts to try and, redo Spider-Man, it's just like, guys, give it up. Just hand it over to Marvel, they know what they're doing. As for the Venom movie, the trailer looks promising for Venom. I'll grant them that. But, I don't know. It's a bit difficult for Venom to have, like, Spider-Man's appearance when Spider-Man doesn't exist in that universe. So, and again, where does it go from here? I mean, a lot of it will probably be answered with the Captain Marvel prequel, because that one's going to be set in the 90s, so it'll be interesting to see where they go from here. But overall, this was a lot deeper and a lot heavier than I thought it was going to be. So, Avengers Infinity War gets a very heavy, dang, that was good. Marvel, how are you going to follow that one up for Avengers 4? How is Iron Man going to get off that planet? How are half the cast going to be brought back? How are the Guardians going to come back? So, And where's Iron Man 4, darn it? I want a fourth Iron Man movie. Mind you, several other people are thinking that as well, but that's a different story. It's really been 5 years since Iron Man 3. Damn. But anyway, this is it from Real Features, from the spoiler review for Infinity War, and leave your comments in the in the comments section below. What did you think of Infinity War? Was it what you were expecting? Could they have done more? Let me know what you think. Until then, folks, MJ Knight signing off for Real Features.